This presentation will be about closers, or concluding your research essay. The content of your conclusion should be about half summary and half conclusion. This is an idea discussed by John Trimble in his book, Writing with Style. Half of your conclusion paragraph should be summarizing your main point, really focusing on what it is that you're trying to accomplish in this essay. The rest of this paragraph should be conclusion. That is, you should end with emotional impact by including at least one new phrase to make your point memorable. You want to really think about how can you leave your reader with a good impression of your topic, whether that is your topic is wrong or whether it's right, we want to support this or we don't want to, depending on what it is that you're making a point about in your essay. Good writers save a couple of choice ideas, phrases, or quotations for the end. You want to have a strong ending thought. We talk a lot about finding a good beginning thought, something strong to hook your reader with, but we don't often cover why you need to end with a strong thought. So, same concept applies when you're looking for something to start your essay with. Go ahead and look for something to use in your conclusion. A nice quote by a famous person, a strong fact or statistic, nothing new, but something that will allow us to think about the topic in a different way. The first idea for concluding your essay is to echo the introduction. This is a good strategy because it brings the reader around full circle. It is useful when you're describing a scenario or discussing a quotation from the beginning. This also provides a way to show that your essay was helpful in creating a new understanding. So let's say that you started your essay and your hook with describing a scenario. Maybe this was a hypothetical story, maybe it was a real story. Doesn't really matter. In the conclusion, then, you can go all the way back to that story about little Timmy Smith or whoever and really tie in why that story was important. Same thing with the quotation. You don't have to re-quote it in the end, but you do want to go back and revisit it. And what happens then is the first time we heard this quote or heard this story, we didn't really have much context. Now we've read your entire essay, so we really understand your point and the topic, and so going back to that scenario will help us to understand it better. The second idea is to challenge the reader. This works really well if you have a topic that's a little more controversial. So it helps the reader to redirect the information in the paper and also to apply it to their own lives. So if you are trying to make a point about saving an endangered species, then your challenge at the end is to get the reader interested in helping support wildlife funds and things like that. So we get a challenge at the end to support your topic. Here's an example. Although serving on a jury is not only a civic responsibility but also an interesting experience, many people still view jury duty as a chore that interrupts their jobs and the routine of their daily lives. However, juries are part of America's attempt to be a free and just society, thus jury duty challenges us to be interested and responsible citizens. Notice how this ending here challenges you to think about the topic in a different way. So this would probably echo the introduction a little bit as well, because that would be your main point, but we also get to think about the topic in a little bit of a different way. So think about, what do you want to leave your reader with? What do you want your reader to think about once they're finished with your essay? The third idea for your conclusion is to look to the future. This emphasizes the importance of your paper and redirects the reader's thought process into the future. It may help to apply new information to their lives as well and help the reader see things more globally. This idea works really well with most topics, in particular topics that are about a little more current ideas. Looking to the future looks to see, how will your topic change in the next few years? How will it change? How will it impact the reader? You can also expand outward and look at how your topic affects other topics. So if you were focusing on one particular species of animal, if that animal died, how would that affect the ecosystem that it lives in? Here's another example. Without well-qualified teachers, schools are a little more than buildings and equipment. If higher-paying careers continue to attract the best and brightest students, there will not only be a shortage of teachers, but the teachers available may not have the best qualifications. Our youth will suffer, and when our youth suffer, the future suffers. So this is a nice way to really drive home why your topic is important and what will happen in the future if something isn't done or is done. So those are three ideas for ending your essay. Now we want to talk a little bit about editing your essay. Once you have completed your conclusion, you've got your entire essay pretty well put together, then you need to start editing your content. So we've got two steps for editing and one step for proofreading. When you edit content, this would be a good rough draft. You want to check and revise your content as well as your style, which is something we've been discussing in class. So this includes tone and word choice. You want to make sure that you've included all of your important information. Go back through your notes on your sources, your outline, make sure you've included everything you wanted to. Two questions you can ask yourself: have you said too much? Do you need to cut out information? Or have you said too little? And sometimes this happens. Do you need to add in supporting details and or examples? A lot of students have difficulty getting to those 8 pages, and so often they're in the too little category. And so you need to start looking for places where you could add an extra example or another detail or a good transition. Is there any additional information you could include to improve communication with your reader? That is your point that you're trying to make, does that come across throughout your entire essay, or do you need to add more? And then finally, does your word choice suggest the right level of formality? That has to do with tone and style. Once you've edited your content, then you can look to your organization. One of the things you might ask yourself is, will your readers be able to identify early on in the document your purpose for writing? The information, is it presented in the most logical order? Are we able to understand all of the topics that you're covering in the order that you've presented them? Does the order help you see connections among your ideas? We've talked about this frequently in class, using those transitions and connections and answering the question, so what? And does the order lead your reader to the conclusion that you intend? So for example, if you are writing a paper in support of homeschooling, but your last paragraph covered all of the problems with homeschooling, we would be left with a negative view of homeschooling. And so without a pullback to see more the positive side again, then we will be left with a conclusion that is not the same as what the author intended. The last step is proofreading. Obviously, you should do this thoroughly and more than once. A couple of things to pay attention to in the research paper: your punctuation, of course. If you know you have a problem with commas, make sure you're looking at those carefully. Capitalization, particularly when it comes to titles and title formatting, spelling, grammar, and then of course you want to make sure that you have used MLA format and that everything is correct and clear on the page. One more topic to cover in this video is second person. We haven't talked about this much in class, but I keep telling you not to use it. You always want to avoid second person, such as you, your, and yourself in formal writing, because it can be accusatory or negative, and it also assumes something about the reader. So for example, when you go to a party and feel that you have to drink at least 3 beers to be able to talk to anyone, then you are an alcoholic. Feeling the need to drink in order to loosen up is a sign that you have a serious drinking problem. You should seek counseling if you find you cannot have fun at a party without getting drunk. Notice how very negative this paragraph is. It's very accusatory. A lot of people would argue, well, I can drink at a party and I don't feel like I have a problem. And so you're going to get a lot of backlash against a paragraph like this. It's not a nice way to write stuff. So you should always avoid that second person when you're trying to do academic writing, because it really doesn't add much to your tone. It really detracts from what you're trying to say. So instead, a better paragraph would be something like, one of the signs of alcoholism is the need to drink in order to loosen social inhibitions and be able to socialize. Students who feel that they must drink several beers in order to talk or have fun at parties may have a serious drinking problem. Anyone who identifies with this problem should seek counseling. So what we've done here is we've replaced the you with third person subjects like students or anyone. Sometimes we even take out the you altogether. So there are many ways to revise that second, and more information about this is on Blackboard. You can pause the video now and revise these 3 sentences for more practice with eliminating second person from your writing. Another subject we need to cover is first person. While you know that second person is something you should never include in academic writing, first person is acceptable, but only occasionally. In your research paper, you are allowed to use first person, but the only time you really should use it is if you need to clarify something, if you need to use personal experience as an example, or if you have your own authority on a subject. For example, if you were to write something like, this author has had a similar experience as the woman in the example when unexpected fees were charged to this author's credit card after she had been enrolled in classes. This is a terrible sentence because it sounds awkward to refer to yourself in the third person. So it would be better to write something like, just like the example, I had a similar experience when unexpected fees were charged to my credit card after enrolling in classes. So you could take your example and further it and add a little bit of authority to your example because you yourself were a student and you had a similar experience. However, first person is not always appropriate, and in particular, you do not want to use first person in your thesis statement. It is absolutely unnecessary in your thesis, and you don't want your thesis to come off sounding like a phrase that would come out of a bibliography or something. You never want to use first person in discussing your research completed, so you don't need to tell us that you went to the library and then you searched EBSCOhost and you found this particular journal. And you definitely don't want to use first person in describing what you think. Because you've written this paper, we assume this is what you think, so you don't need to keep repeating that this is what you think. For example, as I was reading this study of medieval village life, I noticed that social class tended to be clearly defined. We don't need that first part. So the study of medieval village life revealed that social classes tend to be clearly defined is just fine. Adding that first person in there really detracts from the information, which is the most important part of the sentence. So this video has been about closers or concluding your research paper.